Well, we got more shocking news today from the royal family. Catherine, Princess of Wales, has announced that she was diagnosed with cancer and that she's been receiving treatment for that cancer since she had the abdominal surgery. So, like many of you, I'm shocked. We keep getting all this unfortunate news from the royal family, and we're really going to focus on that today. But I'm going to be taking a look at the Princess of Wales astrology chart since she made the announcement. But there's some similarity between the Princess of Wales chart and other family members in the royal family. So, we'll be talking about that a little bit today. For those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you for all my new subscribers and helping me grow. Of course, hit the notification bell so you can get all of my updates. I do a lot of videos on the royal family, but I also do monthly predictions and relevant transits and other celebrities as well. My goal is 10,000 subscribers. By the way, I practice Vedic sidereal astrology, which is a little bit different than Western tropical astrology. So your sign might be different using this method since it uses the sidereal zodiac. So let's go ahead and look at the Princess of Wales chart. And let me pull that up. Also, before we begin, I just want to give a quick disclaimer. All these statements about the Princess of Wales, these are all allegedlys and speculation as to the astrological energies. All right, so let's go ahead, and I want to talk about um, the Saturn transit and also the eclipses that are coming up. Now, I found it really interesting that this announcement is coming right in the time of the eclipses. So we're going to talk about that first, and then we'll talk about the Saturn transit. The eclipses are happening March 25th. So literally within 3 days of making this video, March 25th is when the lunar eclipse is, and then April 8th is when the solar eclipse is. And remember, anytime you're in a time of eclipses, there's always going to be crazy events, especially if someone has the potential karma for that. So let me pull up the slide for you. These are all the eclipses for this year. We got March 21st, March 25th, April 8th, and then later on this year, we're not really as concerned about those eclipses right now because we're talking about this cancer diagnosis. But a lot of times the eclipses are powerful trigger points for karmas. So if you have a karma that's like ready to blossom, a lot of times the eclipse is the trigger point. Okay. And so a lot of times you want to look at what's happening in your life a month before the eclipse and then even several months after the eclipse. That's how powerful these eclipse energies are. And when we look at the solar eclipse, it's particularly powerful. Okay, it's a full solar eclipse. So let's go talk about those eclipses first, and then we'll talk about, like I said, the Saturn transit. Okay, so the eclipses are happening, and let me clean the chart up first. The eclipses are going to be happening in the sign of Virgo and in the sign of Pisces. So this is the eclipse axis in Catherine, Princess of Wales chart. So it really doesn't matter that much what side the eclipse happens on. So for example, the lunar eclipse is happening in Virgo, the solar eclipse is happening in Pisces, but it affects both sides. So I want you to think of this as like this is like it's like a push pull mechanism. So if this side is affected, the other side's affected. Okay, as far as the astrological energy is going, because they're opposing each other. So the thing to notice about this is this upcoming eclipse. It's not an accident that the Princess of Wales made this announcement on as of March 22nd, 3 days from the lunar eclipse, which is happening in the third house. Now look at this. These planets in the third house, which are very difficult planets, their natural malefics are in the third house. So these are being, stimulated by the eclipse. So anytime you have an eclipse near personal planets, there's usually karmas that are being released. Not to mention transiting K2 is there as well. Okay, so the eclipses happen wherever the transiting nodes are. But the third house itself represents media messaging. Okay, media messaging and announcements. Media messaging and announcements. So we're likely even going to be hearing more announcements in the near future. I mean, we might I know right now we just kind of got we know she had the abdominal surgery. We know that she's got a cancer diagnosis, but still, the message was, she was trying to keep it as private as possible, but there's still a lot of questions people have. I feel like more of this is going to be starting, to be rolled out over the next few months with the eclipse stimulating the third house of media messaging. Okay. So we're going to see more of this stuff, more announcements, maybe more videos, maybe more, pictures, like, when people made a really big deal out of the altered photo. Now, the eclipse is happening with Mars and Saturn there. Mars is actually not a bad planet for Cancer. It's more what I feel like what's going on is it's really releasing a lot of these heavy karmas here with Saturn. Okay, so the Saturn karmas. Also, I wanted to bring up with these eclipses happening, okay, the sign of Virgo itself, she had abdominal surgery, which is, the Virgo can represent things like your stomach, your intestines, and kind of your digestive tract as a whole. Okay, so that's actually quite interesting. So we might be getting some information with Saturn there in the sign of Virgo. See, what Saturn represents when we're talking about, like, generally, when we're talking about Saturn, it's like a heavy, dense energy. So it's generally like if it's in the sign of Virgo, which represents like the digestive tract, it's like this heavy, dense astrological energy that's impacting that area. So sometimes people will have issues. And then you got Mars there. So Mars isn't a bad planet, but there's definitely, Mars and Saturn don't quite like each other either. So there's kind of like this really tense energy there. And that could definitely represent some difficult issues there. The other thing I want to point out is we're going to talk about the Saturn transit here. Okay. So I feel like we're going to get more announcements because of the eclipse. It's definitely going to be stimulating more of these astrological energies here. All right, so let's go to the next slide here. Of course, I said the Catherine, Princess of Wales, has announced her cancer diagnosis and treatment. Saturn is in the 8th house. Now, the 8th house represents crisis. It represents shocking news. It represents death and rebirth. And here's a few extra things that I didn't put in my previous videos, but the 8th house can represent hidden disease, invasive surgery, and treatments. So the 6th house, remember, and I talked about this in my previous video about Catherine, Princess of Wales. The 6th house can represent disease and imbalance, but the 8th house would represent the hidden disease and invasive surgery and those sorts of things. Okay. And that's what we saw there with Saturn going through the 8th house. So she's going through a really difficult time because the 6th house is being activated because she's in a Jupiter Antardasha, and then Saturn's going through the 8th house as well. Now, I do say that there's good news, that's the bad news, but there's some good news in this. When Saturn's in the 8th house, it tends to freeze, delay, stop, create obstacles for the negative events represented by the 8th house. Saturn slows events and makes them more manageable. However, this means the recovery is slow. So let's break that down a little bit more in the chart here. Let me bring that up. Now, remember, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but there's 4 people in the royal family that have Cancer ascendant and have Saturn going through the 8th house. So this is a highly significant time for the royal family. So transiting Saturn is in the 8th house here. Remember, the transit started in January of 2023. So that's when the crisis started, even though it might have not been full-fledged, a crisis at that point. But that's when the potentials were ready. And then, obviously these eclipses, they're really triggering some of the karmas associated with it. Now let's go to, it's going till March of 2025. So there's still a whole nother year of this Saturn transit. So we're definitely not in the end of this crisis. Okay. Now, Saturn, when it's transiting the 8th house, what it usually does is it puts somebody through a cycle of death and rebirth. So, for example, this whole crisis and how it's affecting Catherine, Princess of Wales, is, this might be, for all intents and purposes, like the one of the most intensive experiences that she's had in her life. Like this puts somebody like into a state of they're thinking about their mortality, they're thinking about impermanence. And notice that Rahu's going through the ninth house of her astrology chart. So there is this push towards spirituality and really trying to think about, these are what these events do, is they push you to trying to figure out more about what is your philosophy of life, what is your spirituality. It really wakes you up. It's like a wake up call. But when Saturn's going through the eighth house, it's like a glacier. The emergency is like in a slow motion emergency. It's not a fast emergency. It's not like like when you see a very fast event, like for example, like a car accident. It could be a very fast event. Saturn in the eighth house is this very slow motion emergency. So it's like the emergency doesn't fully get figured out till Saturn gets into the next sign, which is going to be Pisces in March of 2025. So eighth house represents transformation and healing. So this healing is a very slow healing. So even though she said, or they said that Catherine, Princess of Wales, is not going to be doing her royal duties till after Easter, I feel like it's going to be even longer than that, because Saturn is going to slow down the recovery. Saturn's going to delay things. It's going to freeze things. It's going to freeze the healing, because Saturn slows that all down. Let me show you in the chart here. Or let's go back to the slideshow. That's what I was meaning. So right here, it says Saturn slows events, makes them more manageable. However, this also means recovery is very slow. Okay. But the good thing about Saturn is very, when it has to do with these events, Saturn is very, it check marks every box. So you can expect that the doctors that are involved, they are like doing every single test. They're checking every single box, because Saturn is like so concerned about doing everything exactly by the book. Okay, so there's nothing there's going to be missed. Everything's taken very serious, and that's part of the slowness of this process. Now, let's talk about the royal family, because the eighth house, remember, in Vedic astrology and even Western astrology, the eighth house represents in laws. So, Saturn going through the eighth house of Catherine, Princess of Wales chart, this is showing difficulty with the in laws. So, with the royal family in general. So, I wanted to bring this up. So, the royal family, we got King Charles, Queen Camilla, Catherine, Princess of Wales, Meghan Markle. I know some of you might not agree with Meghan Markle, but technically she's a a daughter-in-law. But all of these four individuals are Cancer ascendants, so they all have Saturn going through the eighth house, which all shows, you know. Now with King Charles and Queen Camilla, it's not their in-laws; it's just more of a personal emergency, and also the eighth house represents the joint marital estate. So that's something to point out. But from Catherine, Princess of Wales' point of view, Meghan Markle's, this is a crisis with the in-laws. So this is a total emergency. Okay. And of course, it's going to be an emergency for Prince William and Prince Harry as well. So there's enough collective karma that's causing this emergency. Now, this is going to be a period of time for the next year. I feel like we are going to be getting so many more announcements, and things are going to be changing. It's going to be happening over the period of a year, but it's going to seem shocking, because if you think about it, the royal family is it's not usually a fast changing institution. Like if we think about how long the queen was, how long she reigned for, it was a long period of time. It was decades. But this is going to be the year of like things are just changing, and it's going to be shocking for a lot of people, because people are used to this institution changing very slowly and very predictably. So I feel like we're going to see a lot of crisis happening. Okay, for example, because this is eighth house's death and rebirth, we could see an abdication and Prince William going to the throne. Okay, during this year. And hopefully, hopefully it really works out with King Charles. But I want you to know, like, even in a best case scenario, even if King Charles recovers, he could still abdicate if his health is just not well in general. So we have to keep that in mind. There's always the middle ground in these predictions as well. But Saturn in the eighth house is showing that the royal family is in a period of absolute turmoil right now. And so, a lot of us astrologers and tarot card readers that do make a lot of videos on the royal family. Well, we're going to be busy this year because there's going to be a lot of news coming out there. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, and I will be following this situation closely. Just like you, I'm interested in the royal family. So thank you and take care until the next one.